The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And we're coming to you tonight around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and on Simul TV, Channel 32. UFOs are still big in the news today. President Biden addressed the nation, and basically he said, sorry, gang, it's not an alien invasion. We know that the first balloon we shot down was definitely Chinese surveillance. The other three, well, he really doesn't know now, does he? Some people believe it's corporate. Some people believe it's private. Some people believe it's a prank that was perpetrated. I don't buy that one. And so we're still trying to figure out what's going on. And for the latest breaking news, we have that on our Facebook page. Let me see, facebook.com/X Zone Radio TV. So we thought we'd invite somebody that we've had on the show many times. He's a good friend of the X Zone. Preston Dennett is his name, and he is the author of many books. He's got a new book out. Let me see, Not From Here, Volume 4, and another book that is called Symmetry. You can visit him online at prestondennett.weebly.com, and all of his books are available on Amazon. So joining me now is Preston Dennett. And Preston, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Preston, what do you make about all these balloons that are up there? The president went on the air today and basically says, all right, what I said during the opening of the show, basically, yeah, we know one was a Chinese balloon. The other three, we don't know what they are. What do you think they were?
I don't think they're UFOs. I really don't. I think there's a number of reasons why we can discount the UFO explanation. The main one being they don't show what UFO researchers call the observables. Instant acceleration, turning at right angles, these sort of things. According to the reports, they're just floating along with the breeze. Yeah. So that's one main reason. Another is I think they're very difficult to shoot down. We certainly haven't heard anything like this for 80 years since the Roswell crash. We're not getting the press release that we got with Roswell. But yeah, I mean, shooting a missile at a UFO and bringing it down is not likely. These things can move much faster than missiles. We know this. I mean, they outdistance our fastest aircraft. And there's just so many reasons why they're not UFOs. 4, 5, and 2 weeks now?
Yeah, 4 and 2 weeks, yeah.
That doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. UFOs have been around for a very long time. Certainly since the modern age of UFOs, it's ramped up. We haven't heard anything like this for 80 years. Why now?
Yeah, good question. Preston, does the fact that this was a balloon, does this reopen the case for Roswell not being a UFO crash, but in fact Mogul or another type of surveillance balloon?
I don't think so. That's the Air Force's debunking explanation, which is pretty easily debunked itself, especially when they started saying, well, those were dummies there, which they weren't using until I believe it was 1951 or 52. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they're calling them balloons. I think the real news here is why they are waffling on not identifying these as, Chinese or Russian or what have you.
North Korean even.
Right. And leaving the extraterrestrial explanation open. That, I think, is where the real news story is. Why now? Why are they saying that? Why aren't they calling them UAPs?
Right.
Agreed to call them.
So where does the UFO community stand these days? Have there been any more landings? Have there been any more sightings? Have there been any more alien abductions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is a pretty steady phenomenon. I'm talking to people who've had recent encounters, sightings. I think the most recent involving an entity was just a few months ago. A guy up in England who I'm in touch with has had lifelong encounters, and he recently had a gray come into his room. So, yeah, it's still going on. It takes a while, I think, for people to report these cases, so sometimes we don't hear about them instantly. But yeah, I know people who are having encounters.
Why is it that some people have these encounters and other people don't?
$1 million question, isn't it? I think one is that there's a lot more encounters happening than people realize. A lot of people aren't talking, but we do know it follows families. So that is probably one reason. I really looked into this because it's curious to me why some people and not others.
Yeah.
My files are really evenly divided between men and women. I looked into blood type. It's not, Rh negative. It's people of all ancestries. It's all over the world. Young people, people who are quite elderly. I did find a few loose patterns. One is definitely, it does follow families. It's generational, particularly onboard encounters and close encounters. Often there are people who have encounters who are, and this seems kind of obvious, but they're outside late at night. They're driving along a highway in a remote area. So we have a lot of those truck drivers, police officers, night watchmen, people who are on the roads late at night. But I did find one pattern which I find quite interesting. I found that when I was investigating cases of people who've been taken on board and healed, which is a fairly consistent feature of an onboard experience. And it occurred to me when I was interviewing a lady in Norway who had no history of encounters in her family, nothing in her childhood, because that's a pattern, and asked her what her job was. And she says, well, I'm retired actually, but I'm very active in my community right now with animal rights and human rights. And that rang a bell for me because I just interviewed another gentleman who is fighting against racism and does social work. And he had a healing encounter. I started thinking about all my other files. I'm like, well, Betty and Barney Hill. Wasn't Betty Hill a social worker? And I thought of John Hunter Gray. And I found that a lot of my cases involve people who are doing good work. They're doctors, they're teachers, police officers, artists, musicians, inventors, social workers, animal rights activists, environmentalists. It's a loose pattern.
Yeah.
But
it's a pattern.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And
what kind of healings did these people report to you that they'd had aboard the ships?
Oh, wow. I documented quite a few of these, over 300 different types of cases. And
My God.
This is a consistent feature. Really, any major UFO researcher will tell you this, no matter how they feel about the motive. They admit these do happen. David Jacobs, Bud Hopkins, John Mack, Barbara Lamb, Yvonne Smith. I could go on, Philip Mantle, Edith Fiore. But it crosses the board as to what they heal. Little conditions like stomach aches or back aches, kidney stones, injuries of all kinds, certainly broken bones, cuts, colds, flus, got several cases. I have about 20 cases of people who were healed of vision problems, nearsightedness, farsightedness, myopia, night blindness, glaucoma.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's across the board. 30 some cases of cancer. Some are very well verified, by the way. I have doctors' reports really verifying this. So you name it, it's probably a case out there.
Preston, in your opinion, after doing all the research you've done over the many years that you've done it, as well as the number of books that you've written, the people that you've talked to firsthand, what do you think, once again, in your opinion, the ETs are doing here?
Again, $1 million question, but I think we actually have a pretty good handle on it. Because if you look at the onboard experience and what actually happens, it's pretty clear. It follows a set pattern. Certainly the examination, a physical exam, is what we hear most. Often this does include samples being taken, including genetic samples. And then, of course, the hybrid baby phenomena, where people report holding or seeing children who don't look entirely human. And people have asked about this. So apparently the Greys in particular are very interested in that. And according to the reports coming straight from contactees, and I can tell you this is all over the world from people who don't know each other and generally don't read UFO books because often it frightens them. They don't like the subject, but they're given the same story. The Greys are replenishing their genetic race due to damage. But there's multiple agendas. They are definitely healing a lot of people. That seems to be an agenda. And I think another major agenda is trying to warn people, because we hear if you get any message at all beyond "don't be afraid," we won't hurt you. It's going to be along the lines of 2 or 3 things. This is very consistent. I don't care what type of ET you're talking about: gray, praying mantis, human-like, tall whites, little blue beings. They warn people about nuclear proliferation. Number 1, our warlike ways, greed and corruption, destruction of the environment. I mean, we saw this in the Rua, Zimbabwe landing at Ariel Elementary School. That's very consistent. And another is to wake people up to their own psychic abilities. So we do, and this is another pattern as to who's being contacted and why.
Right.
They're profoundly psychic, almost as a rule. There are exceptions, of course, but we see this, and they're waking people up to abilities like mediumship, astral projection, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition. In my latest book, in fact, Not From Here, Volume 4, I found about 20 cases of people who physically levitated following an encounter. And I know how that must sound, but Jacques Vallée has a case. Bud Hopkins, happened to Whitley Strieber, happened to Stephen Greer twice. I have several of my own cases. That's what got me into this. So yeah, that's definitely one of their agendas. Is
let's talk about your case when we come back from this brief break. Exonation Preston Dennett is our guest. www.prestondennett.weebly.com, and we'll be back as we continue trying to understand what is going on these days, and are we close to disclosure? I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Don't go away. Preston Dennett is my guest. Preston, what was it that got you interested in doing the work that you're doing, writing the books, doing tons of research on the UFO phenomenon?
Yeah, I remember it vividly. I came into this field as a complete skeptic, really hated the subject, just didn't believe. Very kind of scientifically minded materialist, still kind of am, but heard a report on the news about a very famous sighting. It's well known in the community. It occurred on November 17, 1986, I believe. A Japanese commercial airliner sighted 2 UFOs over Alaska. It was on their radar. It tracked their plane for some time. And this was really tongue-in-cheek on the news. But it interested me enough to start asking my friends, my family, my coworkers, because I remembered my older brother, Mark, had run into the house some years earlier saying he'd seen a UFO. I didn't believe him. But now I went up to him and he described this really incredible sighting. He basically chased a UFO down the street, down Reseda Boulevard in Southern California. And he had witnesses with him, which surprised me. I kind of thought people who saw UFOs were alone. But I ended up calling both his friends who were there, and they all described the same thing. Metallic craft, a dome on top, colored lights, saucer-shaped. And found out that I had 2 sister-in-laws who had had sightings, including actually seeing grays. I had a friend who had missing time, several friends who had seen UFOs, and I brought it up at work. That was a mistake because they went crazy. They're like, oh yeah, one chased me home from the library. Another lady, she and her whole family had a sighting, and her daughter ended up being visited by grays. So yeah, it hit home for me, literally.
With so many sightings that are being reported around the world, why doesn't the world take it seriously?
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of reasons for this. The main one being there's been a concerted campaign by our own governments for a very long time, involving a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort to make UFO witnesses look ridiculous, to debunk this subject. Project Blue Book, their main aim really was not to investigate, but to make sure that anyone who thought they saw a UFO was either hoaxing, hallucinating, or misperceiving. That was
Why?
their go-to.
Why would they want that? Why would the government want to do that? Wouldn't they want to say, listen, we know it's there, we're investigating it, and these are our findings to date?
You would think. I mean, that's what I thought, and I don't fully understand it to this day. I think part of the reason might be because we actually do have these craft, these technology. Roswell is not the only case of a UFO crash. And if this is true, and we have this healing technology, say, or free energy type technology, well, that's going to have a huge effect on the oil company industry, wouldn't it? Which makes billions of profits, not to mention the pharmaceutical industry, also worth billions. So in a way, I think it comes down to money, power, and control. It doesn't make sense to me. I think it would be more benefit in a lot of ways, certainly to humanity at large, to be truthful about this, truthful and transparent. But the fact is they're not. It's demonstrable. There is a cover-up.
If this cover-up has been perpetrated over years, Preston, why do certain members of the UFO community really believe that disclosure is right around the corner? Because if disclosure was to happen, wouldn't what the government has been trying to conceal and perpetrate all these years, wouldn't that just explode up in their faces?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of naivety, a little bit of idealism,
wishful thinking.
And a little bit of inevitability, because it is a very difficult subject to hide. You can't hide the sky with millions of people having encounters. The cover-up's been a disastrous failure. Most people believe in UFOs.
Yeah, but how can we say it's been a disastrous failure when the majority of the population do not believe? It's the minority of the population that believes. If it was a disaster by the government or the powers to be to cover this up, wouldn't the numbers be skewed in the opposite direction?
They're getting there. It's very close. It's about 50-50, Rob. I think if you actually look at it, recent polls are showing more people do believe than don't.
No disrespect, Preston, but polls can be skewed to any variable that the pollster wants it to skew. So I don't give a lot of credit or put any validity into a lot of these different polls. I understand that there are professional pollsters out there who do an unbiased report, but I haven't seen one yet when it comes to UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot. It seems that whatever is considered the fringe stays the fringe. Nothing comes mainstream. I think the closest I've ever seen to anything coming mainstream is what we've seen over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, this is how dastardly, I think, and effective this campaign to debunk and this phenomena has been. And that's, I think, is probably the most important takeaway from all these recent congressional hearings, 60 Minutes actually tackling this subject and interviewing pilots and these new so-called government organizations who are studying this, is that it is introducing a lot of people to the idea of UFOs visiting our planet, because the evidence is there. I mean, it really is. It's not just eyewitness testimonies. There's radar reports, there's landing trace cases, there's all kinds of medical evidence.
I agree. I agree with the radar reports. I agree with the landing traces. But there's nothing that actually proves that the landing traces or the UFO tracks were done by an extraterrestrial vehicle.
Yeah, proof and evidence are two different things, for sure. And if someone is, there's no doubt some of this is very hard to explain as anything else. But we can't completely discount it because we don't have the baseline of the craft.
Right.
We probably do, but the very best evidence, crash retrieval hardware, relies solely on eyewitness testimony. So you can't really use that. That is hearsay.
And yet I remember having you on the show a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, and you were telling me about these school children who had an encounter. And you have all these children. How can they all be wrong? How can they all be perpetrating a lie at that age?
Precisely. I ended up writing a whole book about this,
Yeah.
schoolyard UFO encounters, because the Rua, Zimbabwe case, the Ariel Elementary School, is a good example.
Hmm.
There's like 200 kids on the playground.
Now, that was in Africa, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And those were just solely kids. But there's the Westall High School case in Melbourne, Australia, in 1966. Some 300 students and teachers. Crestview Elementary School, 1 year to the day, 1967, after Westall High School. Same darn thing. These craft landed next to the school. This is a thing. There are cases stretching all the way back to at least 1950, all the way pretty much to the present day. And yeah, lots of witnesses. These are daylight sightings, by the way, very low level. And in 1/3 of the cases, these objects are landing next to the schools.
Let me ask you, any pictures?
Yes. Yep. There are a few, not what I would call super conclusive. But there is one at Sacred Heart Elementary School in Moline, Illinois, where a police officer was on the premises when a UFO showed up, and he happened to have a movie camera. And he filmed footage. You can find this online.
Right.
At today's standards, it probably wouldn't be super dramatic because it really just shows a sort of a white light in the sky. But certainly the government was very interested. He had intelligence agents show up and wanting to look at this footage. And yeah, there's another case, and there's a couple of them. Yeah, for sure.
With today's technology, everybody has a high definition camera in their pocket.
Yep.
Are there more photos that you're seeing these days compared to the days when everybody didn't have a camera in their pocket?
Yes. But unfortunately, it's such a mess out there with CGI and Photoshop that it's not helpful. I mean, I hate to say it, but people are showing all these photos anonymously, and that's useless. I can't use that. I need eyewitness testimony. I need affidavits. I need multiple witnesses.
Right.
And photographic evidence is largely useless. I actually prefer some of the older photos, like the Santa Ana photos by Rex Heflin, which I think have been very well authenticated. No study has been able to debunk it. There's some really good photos out there. Trinidad Island photo that involved like 100 witnesses and a Navy photographer on a ship photographed this very large object over Trinidad Island. So there are some good photo cases out there, but I would say the most recent that I think is reputable is the Turkey footage, which is quite well known, 2007 and 8 and 9. And that no one's been able to fully debunk that. In fact, the Turkish government declared it genuine.
Another time you were on the show, we were talking about the underwater UFOs off the coast, off the California coast. Has any more research been done into that from you, Preston? And what have you been able to find?
I'm collecting more testimony. It's really hard. I wish I could take a submersible down there and start researching. I have been on a number of television shows who have some of the resources to do that. I think it was Expedition X with Josh Gates, which they did put out a little, camera and did a whole thing, and they caught some excellent footage of this object coming out of the water. I'm kind of limited at this point to collecting eyewitness testimony. I hate to say it. But there is peripheral evidence that points towards, this is absolutely, that area is so active, Rob. It's the top producer, I think, in the, top 10 in the world.
Isn't there also a number of naval bases in that area, as well as experimental research bases that the United States Navy uses?
There is. San Clemente Island is military-owned. Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station. There's also a naval base right at the north end of it. LAX is right there. Absolutely. Pretty darn sure that this activity, some of it's probably military. It has to be given that there's so much there, but definitely not all of it, because I've talked to some of these Navy guys, and they themselves are baffled. And this activity goes back to the 1920s. Before that, we're looking at modern, craft, very much like today, which still outperform anything we've got. We don't have flying submarines, certainly not publicly known. And these things are coming in and out of the water and moving underwater, by the way, as quickly as people report them in the sky.
Wow.
So we have no submarine that can move at, more than 100 miles per hour. And these things are moving at several hundred, if not thousands.
Unreal. Preston, stand by. We've got to take another break. Exonation. Preston Dennett is our guest. www.prestondennett.weebly.com. And all of his books are available on Amazon.com. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. Preston and I return after this short break. Don't go away. UFOs are the topic of the hour here on the X Zone. Our special guest is Preston Dennett, www.prestondennett.weebly.com. Preston, let's talk about your book, Not From Here, Volume 4.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. This is, of course, the fourth in a series. I've been exploring the lesser-known outlying types of UFO cases, ones that don't really fit the standard model of contact, ones that show unusual or perhaps unexplored patterns, cases that a lot of researchers have not really looked into because they're somewhat controversial. So I have chapters on various cases, like UFO car lift cases. That's one of them. These are cases where cars are lifted up in the sky and carried along the road for a while and set back down. And I got into that when I got my own case and was writing UFOs over in Nevada and ran into 3 cases in a row. So bizarre. These are cases where the car is lifted up, carried for anywhere from a few hundred feet to a half mile, full mile, in one case 6 miles, and then set back down. It's a very strange type of UFO behavior. I mean, I'm sure you know, UFOs do have a sort of penchant for chasing cars down the road. But here they're lifting them up. I mean, this is a whole new level of in-your-face activity. It's very brazen. And I think that's sort of the motive behind it. They're really, I don't know if these are teenage ETs joyriding or what's going on here, but it's clearly an intentional sort of behavior.
Any connection between who's driving the car? Do these people know each other? Are they nothing whatsoever, right?
No, not that I could find. There's sometimes 4 people in the car, sometimes 2, sometimes 1. All different types of cars, a Monte Carlo, a Toyota.
Wow.
I did look into all of these. A few cases involving trucks, a U-Haul truck, a big rig as well. One gentleman was driving a big rig, saw a UFO. It came zooming down towards him. He jumped back in his truck to sort of get away, and his truck wasn't moving. And that's when he looked out the window and saw that he was 6 feet in the air.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
Are there any changes or any advances that have been made since the older cases of Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, the Roswell crash, or has everything stayed the same?
Oh, that's a good question, Rob. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. But now that you ask it, it's not advanced nearly as much as I would hope. I think we do have some greater understanding of the agenda. And certainly we've collected more and more evidence in terms of like the landing traces and the radar returns. Angel hair, that's an interesting aspect that doesn't get a lot of attention. I did cover that in one of my Not From Here volumes. That's sort of a cotton candy, spiderweb-like substance that, as near as we can tell, is a byproduct of the plasma field surrounding these craft. There has been advances in studying that in a laboratory setting, but it's still not the smoking gun. I would say the area that really has advanced most is implant removal cases. So we do see some real good science there.
Now, implant removal, that was the forte of Dr. Roger Lear, and Daryl Sims was working with them way back then. So who's carrying the scalpel now that Roger Lear is gone?
Nobody, as far as I know. Not
really.
Yeah, it's distressing because this is a real good forefront. I mean, there's the potential for real science. There is excellent. And we're not seeing that, not as far as I know, not in public circles. I suspect it is going on within what
behind closed doors.
So yeah, it's quite a shame, because I do have people who report implants to me. I mean, I had a lady in Indiana who took her son to the dentist, and they found something under his tooth. She sent me the x-rays, several of them. And the dentist diagnosed it as a foreign body. And so she gave me the x-rays, and I sent them off to an emergency physician and a general practitioner. And they both said the same thing. Whatever this is, it's not natural. It's perfectly round. It's metallic. It's a tooth, which is asymptomatic. The tooth is fine. There's no entry wound. There's no way to determine what this is. But asking the witness, the teenage boy who has this, he does have a history of UFO encounters. And I tracked this case as it occurred. They had grays, after they contacted me, they started having real without encounters. So it's a good case involving photographic evidence at the very least, or x-rays, I should say, of an implant.
Are cattle mutilations still happening?
I'm not a cattle mutilation researcher.
Okay.
I did really look into it when I wrote UFOs over Colorado and New Mexico. Those are the two hardest hit states, but that was some years ago. I believe they are. I'll have to look into that, Rob. I haven't heard any recent cases, but I do know a few people who watch over that carefully. I used to subscribe to the UFO news clipping service.
Right.
They forward everything, and I was able to keep up. But that dried up with the digital age. So I'm not sure I can answer that question.
All right, Preston, we've got to take our final break. Please stand by. And X-Zone Nation, fascinating gentleman. He's got some great books. Do yourself a favor. Check him out on Amazon.com and visit his website, PrestonDennett.weebly.com. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We wrap up this hour on the other side of the short breaks. We're talking to Preston Dennett about UFOs this hour here on the X-Zone. Preston's website is PrestonDennett.weebly.com, and all of his books are available on Amazon.com. Preston, in your opinion, and the opinion of those that you've had the opportunity of speaking to who've had firsthand encounters, do these ETs or visitors pose a threat to humanity?
Simple answer, no. I will say that people do report what they believe to be negative encounters. It can be quite traumatic initially, and often, as a rule, it is. Particularly if you're being pulled on board, because people find this understandably traumatic.
Sure.
So we have people reporting, nightmares and PTSD and insomnia, anxiety, putting double locks on their doors, trying to figure out what's going on. But ultimately, most of the people I talk to do not feel this is a nefarious or evil phenomena. I have really no cases at all of what I would call sadistic, evil behavior, torturing on the part of the ETs. And if you take an objective look at what actually happens to people who are pulled on board, it's quite positive overall. I mean, there are healings, and people who do not react with fear are usually not rendered paralyzed, unable to move, which often does happen. They don't have missing time. They recall it in entirety, and they're shown the engine room. They're given a tour of the craft. This is not unusual. They are taken up to what we would call the observation deck, and they will show you the Earth far below, the moon. I've had a number of people taken to Saturn. No kidding. And again, messages, which are usually along the lines of trying to help us in some way. So these are the things people are reporting. They come back spiritually transformed and ultimately decide that this was something that enriched their life. I did have one lady ask them flat out, "Are you here to take over our planet?" And they said, "No, we have no interest in your planet. You guys are very violent. You're so emotional. You're hard to be around. We have many planets that we have access to. We have no interest whatsoever in your planet." So no, I don't think they pose a threat at all. They've been around forever before, recorded history.
Are the ETs of today the angels and religious figures of days gone by?
Some. I think definitely there's been some conflating there. There was a lady I interviewed in Maine who the ETs told her flat out, who you thought were angels was us.
Right.
So I think possibly yes. But I have to say, I've researched a lot of the paranormal because it does bleed through a little bit in terms of poltergeist activity and paranormal phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
That, of course, includes angels and demons and multiple personalities and all of that. And I think the literature on angels is pretty compelling. I think there is some veracity there, some truth to some of the angel accounts. So I don't want to say all of them are ETs, but I think certainly some, yes.
Have any photos to your recollection, or to the photos that you've been given access to? Has anything come back from the International Space Station?
I wish I could tell you more about that. I'm not really an authority on photographs. As somebody who's been watching it, and yeah, there's a lot of reports of the live feed on the ISS showing what appears to be UFOs. But I mean, if you look into this, the shuttle had all kinds of activity going on. There was one particular mission which looked like the smoking gun, but turned out that they called it frozen balls of urine, not spaceships. It's very hard to say what's going on up there. I wish I had better information for you on that, but I really don't.
So instead of a UFO, they were UOs.
Yeah. It's, photographs are, again, a tough deal in this field. They really are.
With talk about reversed engineering from the different crash scenes, how come we're still using the rocket propulsion systems that we do, instead of using some of the propulsion systems that these craft came to this planet with?
Yeah, well, based on the whistleblower accounts, we are in fact using them. The TR-3B would be what I would point to. This is a difficult forefront of research here, but some of the craft that we're seeing are probably our own. I've been told this from people who should be in the know, government contractors, whistleblowers. I've talked to some people who were on their deathbed and wanted to do their part for disclosure. And I was able to verify some of them in terms of their, security clearance or employment. So I believe them, but I don't have the proof or the evidence. But yeah, I think we have reverse engineered some of these crafts to a certain degree, and that some of what people are seeing is what we would call ET technology or reverse engineered.
How do we know who to believe? For example, I've had TD Barnes on the show, Thornton Barnes, who was a CIA contractor at Area 51. He worked on top secret projects. He worked on the Apollo mission. He worked on the Stealth and so on. And he swears up and down that there never was any aliens at Area 51. There was no reversed engineering at Area 51. There were no crashed vehicles at Area 51. So if you and I have problems believing certain people, how does the public believe them?
Yeah, and this is a real honest to God problem. Yeah. I will say that just based on what we do know from documents released through the Freedom of Information Act, our intelligence agencies do show an interest in this subject. And I don't trust a lot of people within government, CIA, FBI, NSA, because their handling of this has been so full of disinformation and misinformation and lies and excuses and obfuscations. And so it's difficult. I think what we do know is that with the huge number of people coming out of the woodwork who are whistleblowers in some capacity, these stories start to line up. They show a consistency in their details. And that's what I look for. I mean, in terms of like the secret space program, I'm putting a lot of that on the back burner right now.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you, we started the show talking about the government and the cover up and the misinformation in order to suppress the topic. How then can we trust anything that is acquired through the Freedom of Information Act as being legitimate?
I think because these are documents which are verified, often there was a long, struggle to get a hold of them. This was not something our governments did willingly at all. I don't think they're willingly disclosing right now. The congressional hearings that were, 3-4 years ago, were riddled with lies. They were asked about Malmstrom. I don't know if you remember this.
Sure, Captain Robert Salas's case, where that Malmstrom Air Force Base allegedly a UFO disabled a nuclear missile in its silo.
Exactly, and there's more and more witnesses. I talked to one myself. This is a whistleblower who did contact me personally, Mel Hansen. He was there, and he described it in detail. And when this was brought up at the congressional hearings, Moultrie and Daley said, "We have no reporting on this." That is laughable. They were asked, "Have we ever shot at a UFO?" No, that's demonstrably untrue. We know this from the Battle of LA. We have documents on that. We have photographs.
But I think with the Battle of LA, we really don't know what they were shooting at because there's no evidence or clear photographic evidence of what they were shooting at.
There's an awful lot of eyewitness testimony.
But the eyewitnesses, Preston, an eyewitness can only identify something that they know the identification of, right?
Well, correct. I mean, they can, say that this is not a helicopter, a blimp, a satellite, and so forth. This was an object that stayed over Culver City for 2 hours.
Like the Chinese balloon stood over Malmstrom Air Force Base for an hour.
This was quite large. I think that it was much lower in the Battle of LA because if you look at the photographs, we have searchlights trained on it.
Yeah,
I did talk to eyewitnesses. One said he saw one of the smaller objects come right down over his house 200 feet up, and it was not a plane, as was initially put forth, Japanese airplanes. Yeah, that's the problem, the baseline. If we could have a UFO study, this would make this field much easier.
My final question for you tonight, my friend, is why haven't they landed and said, "We are here"?
Well, I sure wish I could answer that. I think contactees have, and we're told, "Are you crazy? You are not."
No, I mean, here we are. Here we are, the White House lawn. Boom, a UFO lands. And simultaneously, a UFO lands in Red Square. A UFO lands at Buckingham Palace. UFO lands at Parliament Hill in Canada. Why don't they just do that and get it over with?
I think this is actually a possibility. But what we've seen is look at the flyover at the Capitol in 1952. Our reaction was not positive. We sent jets after them. We were trying to shoot them down at this point.
But if they understand humanity, wouldn't they know that that's what we would do? That we would try to defend ourselves against an unknown object who may be out to have caused harm to the civilian population? Don't they realize this? Because when I hear this from different people, it's like they don't know what we're really about. And if they've been studying us for all these years, they should know that by now. So why would they try and entice us into, to engaging them with our limited weaponry at the time?
I think that they are doing their best. There's a type of behavior called a UFO display. And we see this with the schoolyard encounters. I wrote a book on UFOs over drive-ins.
Yeah.
This is where they come down and basically show themselves. We see this with any UFO wave you want to point to, whether it's the Belgian wave, the wave in France in 1954, or Hudson Valley, Wytheville, Virginia. It's all over the world.
But if they're doing that, Preston, why don't they do it in a manner that can really matter, where there can't be any denial whatsoever? Why don't they just do it, like I was saying, in places where there's plenty of news coverage all the time, where there are plenty of credible witnesses all the time, where it cannot be denied?
Yeah, well, I hope they're listening right now because I would like to know the answer to that question myself.
Yeah.
I really would. I think it's time. I think we could handle it.
I think so too.
Ready.
Preston, let our listeners know where they can find out more about you, my good friend.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. I do have a website. Just punch my name in. It should take you there. I also have a YouTube channel. I'm all over social media. If you want to contact me, it's pretty easy. And my books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other online retailers. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Rob. I think this is an important subject.
It is. And you'll be back, my friend, as we talk more about this and as more and more information comes across both our desks. So until then, Preston, thanks very much for all you do. And it's always a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
All right, and Exonation, if you'd like to contact Preston, if you have a report that you'd like to give Preston, if you've had an experience, good, bad, or indifferent, contact Preston through his website at prestondennett.weebly.com. Well, that's it for tonight, Exonation. I'll be back tomorrow night at this hour as we once again cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And I must say, these are very interesting times, whether you're a believer or you're a skeptic. Thank you for joining us here in the X Zone. To my studio producer, Craig West. Thank you, Craig. Mac Alexander, my programming director. Always great working with you, Mac. And to my senior producer and wife and my best friend, Laura Rogers. Always great working with you. And get the coffee ready. The Beautiful Mind coffee ready, because, honey, I'm on my way home. And until tomorrow night, my friends, always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night now.